The canyon of the Marañón River cuts a forever deepening furrow through the eastern Peruvian Andes, plowing north for 600 miles before finally turning east into the jungles of the Amazon basin. Excited, John Wasson, Ellen Toll, Tom Fisher, and myself loaded into a bus and began the slow trip to the Marañón. We went out to save the world. I don't really know if we had a reason other than just we were young and footloose, and there was a place on the map we couldn't find anything out about. We did some research and it appeared to have been unrun. And something about it appealed to us. We thought we were good enough to be able to do that, and we were well humbled doing it. I was 25 at the time, pretty wet behind the ears. I think we were all conservationists in our sense and respected the land, but the idea of climate change really hadn't hit then, and there was no real threats to the Marañón or to other South American rivers at that point.
In recent decades, Peru's economy boomed. The globalization, deregulation, and tax reform of the mining industry in the 1990s gave big incentives for foreign investors and privatized natural resource decisions. With a thriving export market for copper and gold, Peru is one of the fastest developing nations in South America. But this comes with consequences. Before the world's largest river was ever called the Amazon, it was known as the Marañón. Today, we know the Marañón as the headwater of the Amazon, a 1,000-mile river in Peru, within a canyon far deeper than the Grand Canyon in the United States. It connects the longest mountain range to the biggest rainforest on Earth. But that can change real quick. 20 hydroelectric dam projects have been proposed for Rio Marañón. They would displace thousands of people in order to produce energy for neighboring countries and new mining ventures along the Andes. Little is known about the ecological impacts of a dam clogging the path from the Andes to the Amazon, because the majority of research has been site-specific and privately contracted by the dam companies. To begin to truly understand the river and gauge the impacts of dams, you would need to touch it. You would need to sample it and note it, from high desert to low jungle. Nearly 40 years after the first descent, an international gang of scientists and river experts did just that. The lore of a vanishing river and the pulse of everything it touches pulled them into the Grand Canyon of the Amazon. Pedro Peña first came to the Marañón as a river guide for dam survey crews. After 8 trips with the dam companies, he quit out of respect for the locals who protested the dams. And then he met Rocky, who first came to the Marañón in 2012 on the first descent of the source-to-sea route of the Amazon River. After learning of the proposed dam projects, Rocky brought Sierra Rios, his conservation and river guide service, to the Marañón.
The Marañón is a unique and special river in many respects, and that's partly why I've been focusing so much attention and trying to bring more people to it to help save it and prevent these hydroelectric projects from going in.
De ver qué es lo que pasa en ciertos ríos, qué es lo que hacen y cómo termina si es que hacen estas represas. Entonces decidí cambiar mi punto de vista y comenzar a proteger este río, a cuidarlo.
Ready to go?
Guided by Pedro and outfitted by Sierra Rios, the crew hailed from different hometowns with distinct expertise.
Things started with some people just wanting to raft this wonderful river corridor before all these dams went in.
It was a very organic thought process and start to building the crew. And
we assembled a pretty awesome and robust team of scientists for the trip.
Building everything around this idea of bringing some of the science out of the river corridor to the larger world.
They came together to float the river before it was too late and investigate the ecological link from the Andes to the Amazon.
Okay, so we're coming into the narrow section. Very sharp wall, pontoon just exploded. And we ended up with a rip about yay long. And now we're doing a good old repair job. First day we have some broken oars. Second day we have a exploded cataract. But nice band of people here, having a lot of fun. All good on the hood, you know. We are going step by step.
Alice wasn't going to let a little tear in her raft stop her study. The Marañón is the greatest annual water source for the Amazon.
So I'm taking water samples of the Marañón River and its tributaries to understand the chemistry of these waters, and getting a snapshot of what the water chemistry looks like now before any land use change or hydropower development. Being able to have an initial data set to build a record upon is useful for both decision makers present and in the future to be able to inform their resource management decisions based on data-driven science.
Dado que en el transcurso de mi viaje he podido observar que van a quedar bajo el agua ruinas incas, como así también lugares aptos como para el turismo, unas explotaciones futuras, como por ejemplo aguas termales.
I would say I matured a lot on the Marañón. It taught me respect for the river, much more respect for the grandness of the scale of wilderness.
The activeness of the canyon and the mountains around. I mean, this thing could be a completely different river next year at this time if you came. Just the way the walls are crumbling and the way the mountain, there's constant rock slides and boulders are moving. You can hear the boulders move if you go over a shallow spot and you move them with your raft. It's just a very active, wild place.
All that activity and seasonal flooding wreak havoc on infrastructure like bridges. It was hard to imagine how a dam could survive this river, and the crew questioned if the river could survive a dam.
So one of the easiest ways to conceptualize river systems is a conduit for material to flux and move from where it's generated high up in the landscape in the mountainous environment and get its way out through to other ecosystems out into coastlines. So at the biggest scale, you can start in a high mountain range, like here in the Andes, and see things like landslides and debris flows and really active processes that are removing material from the mountains and bringing it into the river system. It's either carried by the river in suspension, so that it's just sitting in the water column and moving, or it's dissolved. And that includes not just sediment and water, but also nutrients and things that are important for the surrounding aquatic ecosystems.
The impacts of damming large rivers with high sediment loads are really far-reaching, and the impact from a series of dams on the Marañón may probably most likely reach all the way down to the Amazon Delta, which is one of the most biodiverse locations on Earth. So from the dams, I think that we can expect a loss in species diversity, a loss in fisheries, and a loss in fertile, productive farmlands downstream.
Of course, all this movement of material also creates some wild water.
At the head of the rapids, the roar was overpowering. The river had been dammed about 75 feet deep sometime during the past year by a large flood out of a side canyon, and a landslide which came off of the opposite wall. You know, I'd hiked in the Grand Canyon, and we thought that was the deepest canyon in the world. And I quickly knew in the Marañón that we were in something far bigger.
The excitement of the unknown and not doing it before in whitewater, I think, is why a lot of people go out to run new rivers, is because there's not many places, not many rivers that have been kind of undiscovered like the Marañón.
Like class 4 whitewater, but the consequences of not catching the eddy for lining the boat, sieves everywhere. That's added a whole nother factor of danger as you're navigating the rapid.
You feel pretty small. And when you're running rapids that, you know, are dropping at 3 times the gradient of the Grand Canyon, which is considered a really classic and hard river, you learn a much different respect. You learn to scout the rapids, you learn to portage when you needed to.
We started moving the boats down through the class 5, 6 section there with just one line kind of penduluming the boat down the river.
But more importantly, I think I just learned that I wasn't invincible anymore. We had to take a little bit of care.
You're looking at, 2 meter drop in the middle of a very long class 4 plus rapid.
And knowing you get to look at it one time and then run it is pretty exciting.
Inner Gorge is a whole nother world.
Get your heart pumping.
Holy shit, you guys. Okay.
Now that's going to happen again. We don't want more swimmers today. Not for fun.
Dam site. All of a sudden that reality hits you. Oh man, this is the dam site. This is why we came down here, is because potentially all this is going to be underwater, and all this, wonderful experience we just shared together upstream potentially was going to be completely gone.
So the access to the outside world was almost none. So you felt really isolated from the beginning. But I still just think of, these friendly people. They were very reserved. They'd see us on the river and just stand and watch, but as soon as we would stop, they became very animated and really excited. We always tried to ask them about the river down below, and they always told us that it was impossible, it was impassable. And we asked them about the river above, and they always said, well, it's no problem. And finally we said, why is it no problem? And after a while it kind of came out, well, you're here, so obviously it's no problem.
Yo pienso que prácticamente si a llegar a represar el Marañón, yo perdería todo. ¿Y de qué vivo? Esa es la pregunta. ¿De qué vivo? Yo soy un hombre pobre. ¿Ve? ¿Cómo estoy? Yo vivo de mi chacrita, vivo eso. No soy un profesional.
Y mi objetivo era tratar de lograr establecer qué información tienen en relación a los proyectos de represas sobre el río Marañón, como así también las cuestiones culturales, sociales y de reubicación poblacional.
Por mí, Chavín, que vaya ya, porque para mí, gracias a Dios que esto se dé, para que siquiera nos reconozcan nuestras tierras, que vive Botao, capaz, ahí por ahí, ¿sí?
Propietarios son unos cuantos, y el resto son peones. Y dígame, ¿y de dónde se van a poner? Y dígame, ¿dónde se van a ir? Yo conozco la ciudad, que para la ciudad no se puede pasar la vida si no tiene secundaria. Como dice, hasta para lavar pañales tiene que tener secundaria. Y dígame, aquí hay gente que a veces ni leer ni escribir saben. Y en eso estamos alerta de ya.
To assess the current biological health of the river, the crew looked in unexpected places.
Your shoe?
I figured I should be nicer, right? Oh, yeah.
The venom is here in...
Venom as well.
Oh yeah, look, it'll kill a dog.
So it'll make us sick.
Like a smaller one. Oh yeah.
There's a big bend right here.
The venom is proteolytic and similar to some snakes.
It'll paralyze you?
Yeah, maybe something like this. Mi pasión por los insectos se inició desde muy pequeño. Será desde que era un niño. Todos ellos cumplen un importante rol en el ecosistema y además pueden ser usados en bioindicación de ambientes acuáticos. Pero es de esta manera que los insectos pueden indicar un grado de contaminación, ¿no? Por su presencia o ausencia o la variación en sus poblaciones.
Biggest thing at camp here is everyone's been getting into the communal collection of bugs, and whenever they see a bug, they yell, "Science!"
Río, dame vida para amar. Río, quiero río, para así poder andar. Que si este río es libre, libre soy para inventar. Río, dame vida para andar.
Bueno, sí, en el momento que uno es médico, ya tiene un conocimiento que te permite ayudar a las personas, ¿no? Y además me permite conocer a las personas desde una perspectiva distinta y poder acercarme a ellos y aprender de ellos. Hayan poblaciones que todavía no cuenten con agua potable. Y eso significa que hay un Estado que está preocupado en represar este río, en producir energía de este río, pero es un Estado que no está preocupado en que la gente que vive al lado del río tenga agua para tomar limpia, que no la enferme. De la sierra, de la montaña, que es Celendín, en el distrito de Cajamarca, si bien esta ciudad no está a la orilla del río Marañón, la gente de la ciudad entiende que el río Marañón y su cuenca...
O sea, con esto, siempre cuando he estado en la escuela nos han dicho, El Marañón es pulmón del mundo porque oxigena todo el ambiente de todito el mundo.
Celandine has become a headquarters for environmental defense, partly due to its history with mining. After the deregulation of the mineral sector, the Yanacocha mine broke ground in 1993 and has since upended over 156 square miles of the Cajamarca region. While Yanacocha is now the largest gold mine in South America, the region has become one of the poorest in Peru, and its residents have suffered numerous health problems associated with the mine. Recently, citizens of Celandine protested the construction of a new mine called Conga that would be powered by a proposed dam in the Marañón.
Y en todo el pueblo, cantidad de...
¿Y eran militares o...?
Claro, militares.
¿O policía?
Protesta contra Conga.
¡No me pegues! ¡No me pegues! ¡Cobarde! ¡No me pegues!
Ahí pues mataron unos 5.
Y finalmente uno cuando se acerca al pueblo, se acerca al campesino, se da cuenta que es un campesino que le tiene miedo al Estado.
¿Cierto? No hay juicios justos, sino que se deja presionar precisamente por las empresas transnacionales.
Y otro problema que tenemos nosotros es con la prensa. La prensa es muy parametrada. Nosotros no tenemos facilidad para hablar, ni para decir, ni A ni B. Padre bendito, y eso no sabe el mundo. O si es que saben, saben unos cuantos, ¿no? Pero es necesario que ustedes, por ejemplo, hagan extensivo el sentir del pueblo de Celandine, de Cajamarca, del Perú, de que tenemos que apoyarnos aquí el mundo entero con...
Well, in Peru, all these decisions now are private. They are not government decisions. There is no government planning ahead for the energy development of Peru. So all decisions are entirely private and depends from the profitability of the project.
Peruvian engineer Jose Serra Vega previously worked in hydroelectric utilities, the United Nations Environment Program, and managed the social and environmental division of Peru's largest mining company.
In the middle part of the Marañón, there are two big projects, Veracruz and Chadín II.
Of all the proposed dam projects, these two were the first to be approved.
In the case of Chadín II, it's a big Brazilian company called Odebrecht.
Just above the anticipated flood zone for the Chadín II Dam, Odebrecht opened a field office in the town of Balsas with the mission of convincing locals to sell their lands to the company. When asked why people were refusing to leave, an employee said it was because they're ignorant and uneducated.
Initially, these people accepted the engineers because they did not know about the consequences of the dam, and they were happy because they were getting some pocket money from them. But then, when they realized that the dam was going to flood their territories, they rejected them completely. In the case of Chadín II, about 1,000 people will be displaced.
Naturalmente, nacido y criado acá en este pueblo de Tupén Grande. Mi vida, esta tierra, para mí es como padre y madre.
The reservoir from the Chadín II Dam would bury the town 75 meters deep.
Entonces, de este donde estamos parados, 75 metros hacia arriba.
Hacia arriba, sí. Eso, me imagino hasta ahí. Nos dimos cuenta que los estudios también no estaban conformes. Hacían sus estudios con gente comprada. Comienza la oposición. Comenzamos la oposición. No, como dice, porque somos ignorantes, porque somos y no queremos, sino porque nos dimos cuenta de los malos actos que estaba haciendo esta empresa.
With limited access to the outside world, villages like Tupan Grande rely on volunteer neighborhood patrols, called Ronda Campesina, to guard their land from the dam companies. In response, the companies filed criminal charges against them, but the Rondas ultimately succeeded in delaying the construction of the Charindos Dam long enough for the true corruption to come to light. In 2016, Odebrecht pled guilty to the U.S. Justice Department for paying $788 million in bribes across 4 continents and 12 countries. This scandal implicates 4 of Peru's presidents. Odebrecht was fined $3.5 billion in the largest international corruption scandal in modern history. So for now, the Charindos Dam is off the table. Every victory counts for the local resistance, but to permanently protect the Marañón, they need help from beyond the canyon walls.
Well, it's been 40 years or more since I've been down on the Marañón. And at that time, we didn't really envision it as an area for recreation because the equipment that we had, we were pushing the limits. I can't even imagine what mines and dams would do. It would destroy the culture. But even ecotourism needs to be done with thought. Because when you bring a lot of people in, you're bringing a lot of influence, you're bringing a lot of behavior change.
Founded in 2016, Marañón Waterkeeper is a nonprofit based in Lima, working to protect the river.
But right now, the decision whether or not to dam it depends solely on the Ministry for Energy and Mining. What we're looking for is to involve in the decision-making the Ministry for Tourism, the Ministry for the Environment, and citizens.
Dios quiera que ganemos esta lucha y seguir adelante. Gracias a ustedes también que siempre valoran nuestra naturaleza y ojalá que como este grupo sigan viniendo más grupos también y repotenciemos este Marañón. Gracias, amigo.
Everything helps because the more word that gets put out there, the more people are going to pay attention and the more pressure there's going to be both on the companies that are thinking about building the dams as well as the government officials who can really make the decisions to stop these projects.
Environmental concerns arise from the fact that we don't even know what impacts the dams would have.
One of the problems that we have seen with the environmental impact assessments that are being done for each dam is that they're looking at the impacts of each dam as if they were independent. And the reality is that they're all being planned to be in the same basin. So what we need is to have an environmental strategic assessment that looks at the cumulative impacts of all the dams that are planned for the Marañón River.
While most of the crew brought extensive whitewater experience from abroad, the Peruvian scientists on the team had the most stake in the river and the most to learn from it.
Rafting. Para ser mi primera experiencia en rafting, me gustó mucho. Me encanta sentarme adelante del bote, con las piernas libres, el viento en la cara. Es peligroso, pero es muy, muy bonito.
Y estas dos actividades son probablemente muy útiles para los científicos como yo, que estudiamos los ríos y quebradas.
So that's my dream, like after working like a few years in rafting, a few more years, my plan is to make a kayak school or a rafting school to teach more people to learn that and to do that sport, because it's really amazing like that they would take care more about the rivers.
Para mí la tierra está viva, como para muchas personas. Entonces, toda vida en esta tierra es importante, así sea del insecto más pequeño, para mí es importante. Por lo poco que he visto y bueno, en estos días de trabajo tiene una rica fauna, no solamente en la Cuenca Grande, sino de todos los tributarios.
In the case of Veracruz, 730 megawatts, the studies have been finished already, so they are ready to start construction. They have all the authorizations. No opposition from population because the countryside is empty. There are no people live there.
Yeah, so ecologically, Veracruz would flood an area which is super important. It's a transition zone between the dry forests of the Marañón and where the jungle begins. And aesthetically, it's one of the most stunning areas on the whole river with red rock walls and waterfalls cascading into the valley. One project that we're working on is to create a conservation area within the inundation zone, which will create a focal point for the resistance against Veracruz. If we have 1,000 hectares of pristine, seasonally dry tropical forest and highly endemic forest that's going to be flooded, then we have something we can talk about and we can quantify exactly what's going to be lost. It doesn't automatically stop them from flooding that area, but if we have a crowd of stewards, of people who have helped us to purchase and create and care for this land, then we've got a few hundred people that are going to fight tooth and nail just to say, no, we're not going to sell you this, we're going to fight hard to keep it. And yeah, with small things like that, we can start building resistance against that dam. And another strategy is to create the link that this dam is going to have major impacts on the indigenous people who live very close downstream.
El río Marañón es del pueblo abajún. ¿Por qué decimos? Porque es su mercado. De eso nos alimentamos. El pueblo abajún nació para defender su territorio. El pueblo abajún nació para vivir junto con la naturaleza y lo suyo.
Throughout their long history in this region, the Awajún resisted both the Incan and Spanish empires. Now, international laws for indigenous communities provide them the only legal precedents to fight the dam projects in court.
Por eso decimos, de todo, de donde empieza el río y hasta donde termina, aproximadamente hay 40,000 indígenas. Una vez, al haber un reclamo, una protesta, es un solo. Una sola voz es Pueblo Abajún dice.
August 19th, 1977. My strongest feelings were similar to those I had felt many times during the trip. What will happen to these people when modern civilizations begin to overrun them? Will their methods still remain the best for the difficult areas that they live in and repel an influx of people? Or will they fade like so many other cultures against the threat of civilization? It had everything, all the way from the great glaciated mountains in the Cordilla-Waiwash all the way down into the rainforest. By then it was already a huge river the size of the Mississippi or greater. So the transformation from a small trout stream where we put on of a few hundred cubic feet per second to this monster river was just eye-opening. It's just a fabulous experience and just still a wonderful place. And I have a special place in my heart for it 40 years later, and I do hope to go back.
And he can, because some things haven't changed. You can still float the Marañón without dams. The difference is the threat of change. More dam sites are being approved, and those with approval are just waiting for funding.
Yo ahora tengo muchos sueños de que están terminando estos proyectos donde ya están casi las represas y no podemos entrar al río. Entonces es como algo que me incentiva a tratar de invitar a más personas que puedan conocer este río, que puedan ver en realidad por qué estamos tratando de proteger este río.
After 28 days and 385 miles, the waters became murky with a mix of emotions and perspectives. But the research showed some clarity. Together, Jorge, Stephanie, and Natalie collected over 10,000 macroinvertebrates, some of which cannot survive in polluted waters. This indicates good water quality. Alice's water sampling led to the development of new ways to estimate the sources that control river flow in remote places. Using natural chemicals and isotopes, she found that much of the dry season flow in the Upper Canyon comes from groundwater stored in alpine wetlands. Other nearby studies show a decline in wetland reservoirs linked to shrinking Andean glaciers in a warming climate. So there might not be enough consistent flow to sustain the long-term energy projections of hydropower development on the Upper Marañón. Jamie collected imagery from satellites and a drone in the field. Her study helps us figure out how much and how quickly sediment could be trapped behind dams rather than delivered to the Amazon, which limits the economic lifespan of the dams and impacts river shape, form, and process downstream. These scientists continue to collaborate with Marañón Waterkeeper to find new ways to better inventory and monitor the environmental resources of the river. And that's the thing about the Marañón. It doesn't just connect the mountains to the jungle. It connects people. And those people are on the move to understand and protect one of the last great free-flowing rivers.
Cuando éramos niños, la tierra parecía inmortal. Madre dulce, compañera, educadora, celestial. Mira cuán lejos llegamos, sin siquiera mirar atrás. Sin recursos nos quedamos. Río, dame vida para amar. Río, quiero río para así poder andar.